If you can solve this problem, you can do whatever you want with me.
It happened during our middle school reunion. A former classmate, who had grown into a stunning beauty, handed me a difficult math problem written in English.
She used to bully me back in middle school. This was probably just an extension of that. This problem is called the Master Demon, and even in the International Mathematical Olympiad, very few got it right. But considering how much of a study nerd you were back then, you should be able to solve it in no time, right?
Yeah, I solved it.
Right, there's no way you could solve.
Wait, what did you just say?
I said I solved it.
When I showed her the answer, she looked frustrated and muttered, "It's correct." The room buzzed with surprise.
What? How could you solve that?
As my friend revealed who I really was, the murmurs around us grew louder. So, as promised, I'll do as I please. The color drained from her face at those words. This was what you'd call a reversal of fortune. I took her pale hand.
And then?
My name is Colin, and I returned to my hometown after 10 years.
I came back to attend my middle school reunion. To be honest, I don't have many fond memories from those days.
After my father died in an accident, my already struggling family faced even more hardship. Seeing my mother work tirelessly, giving up all her pleasures for the sake of supporting me and my sister, I resolved to get a good job and make life easier for her. That's why I spent all my time studying in middle school. There was one classmate who looked down on me for it.
Her name was Katie.
She was the daughter of the CEO of Zeller's Publishing, a company that had expanded nationwide with its correspondence courses. She always found a way to make snide remarks at me. She'd say my belongings were secondhand, or that I was a pitiful poor kid with no hobbies other than studying.
She even hid my shoes, textbooks, and pencil case.
There was no proof that Katie was the one behind it, so I kept it to myself, not telling my teachers or my mother. I heard Katie would be attending the reunion too. Honestly, I would have preferred to come up with an excuse like I have plans and skip it.
But when my friend Samuel, who was organizing the event, said, "I really want to see you," I couldn't refuse. But then, I reminded myself, it's okay.
Before I returned to my hometown, I couldn't help but share my anxiety with my mother, and she reassured me. After 10 years, I'm sure everyone's grown up, so you probably won't hear any snide remarks.
And now, and even back then, you were a son I could proudly show to anyone.
I know you studied hard for my sake. So hold your head up high. Remembering my mother's words, I straightened my back. And so, I made my way to the reunion venue. The reunion was held in the grand ballroom of a hotel near our old middle school. The place had recently been renovated, and it looked quite nice. The meal was served buffet style. After we all toasted, led by our organizer Samuel, everyone began to freely enjoy themselves, getting food or catching up with old friends.
"Long time no see, Colin." As I was wondering what to do, Samuel came over to me.
We clinked glasses and toasted again, just the two of us.
"Sorry I haven't been able to meet up since we started working. My job keeps me so busy." "I'm busy too, so it's mutual."
"Is that so?"
"Colin, if I remember correctly."
Just as Samuel started to say something, I heard a voice.
"Oh, isn't that Colin?" I turned to see an incredibly beautiful woman.
I immediately recognized her as Katie. She was already pretty back in middle school, but she had grown even more stunning.
"Long time no see." "I went to a different high school, so it's been since then, right?"
"Yeah.
I moved away after that, so."
"Oh, really? You had such good grades, but I figured you didn't come to the same high school because you couldn't afford the tuition."
"But I guess you could afford to move, huh?" Katie feigned surprise in a mocking tone.
Standing beside her, her friend Lily snickered at me.
Samuel furrowed his brows in irritation.
"Katie, you might look prettier now, but it seems your heart hasn't changed." "Oh, thanks for the compliment, Samuel."
"But you might catch poverty if you hang out with him."
"I won't catch anything like that."
Now, Samuel." "It's okay, I'm fine."
I calmed Samuel down as he tried to defend me.
Katie then turned her attention back to me. "You're still just as timid as ever. You couldn't even tell anyone that I was the one hiding your stuff back then, right?" So it was you after all, Katie. Colin kept quiet because he said he didn't have any proof.
Well then, how about this? If you can solve this problem, you can do whatever you want with me. With that, Katie pulled out her phone and showed me the screen after a few taps. Samuel peeked at it from the side, making a face like he had swallowed something bitter.
Whoa, the problem's in English. If you can't even read it, you can't solve it.
Samuel's words drew the attention of the other classmates, who began gathering around to see what was going on.
Katie smirked at the growing audience. Exactly.
And that problem is called the Master Demon, an extremely difficult one that even in the International Mathematical Olympiad had a very low correct answer rate.
But, considering how much you studied back in middle school, you should be able to solve it in no time, right? Yeah, I solved it. Right, there's no way.
Wait, what did you just say, Colin?
I said I solved it.
I borrowed paper and a pen from the wide-eyed Samuel and wrote down the answer. I didn't want to use my phone, as I didn't want anyone thinking I had cheated. Katie snatched the paper from me and stared at it intently.
It's correct.
The crowd around us buzzed with excitement.
What? How could you solve that?
Lily exclaimed in shock. Everyone else seemed to share her disbelief, nodding in agreement.
Colin graduated from Oxford, so of course he can read English.
Though, even I'm surprised he solved such a difficult math problem.
Seeing me hesitate to explain, Samuel answered for me.
The voices of surprise grew even louder. Amidst the growing crowd, it was Katie who clenched her teeth in frustration.
Don't lie.
There's no way a poor kid like you could have studied abroad, let alone at Oxford. Actually, the reason we moved was because my mom remarried.
Her husband is Mr. Thompson, the CEO of Thomson Electronics. Thomson Electronics. That's a major company. As soon as I mentioned my father's company, the crowd became even more excited.
I had given up on going to high school, but my dad saw my grades and suggested I aim for Oxford University. So instead of attending high school in Japan, I went to school over there, studied hard, and got into Oxford.
So, Colin, what do you do now? I'm working at my dad's company as a consultant.
I sometimes take on projects from other companies as well.
Wow, that's impressive.
As word spread, more and more people began to gather around. It was the first time being surrounded by so many people, and I felt dizzy from the experience.
Hey, stop pushing.
Katie, who was standing in front of me, was pushed away by the crowd.
In the commotion, someone's drink spilled on her dress. Hey! Who spilled their drink on me? My dress is ruined. This was expensive, you know.
The people around began to keep their distance as Katie, her face flushed with anger, fumed. No one admitted to being responsible, so Katie glared sharply at those around her. Standing before her was Lily.
She wore a mocking expression directed at Katie. Getting so upset over a little spill?
You must be really stressed, Katie.
I guess it makes sense. Considering your company's sales have been plummeting lately. What are you talking about, Lily? Why are you?
And you know, you're really not all that impressive.
Colin always had better grades than you.
Yet, you looked down on him and bullied him.
Just like you did to anyone who was better than you. I've always hated that about you. You acted so high and mighty just because you were the daughter of a wealthy CEO. What, did Daddy buy your way into high school and college too?
Katie's face turned a mix of red and pale at Lily's words. Seeing her reaction, Lily's smirk grew even wider.
By the way, Katie, didn't you just say that Colin could do whatever he wanted with you if he solved the problem? So, Colin, what will you do?
She's got the looks, so maybe she's good for a one-time fling before you toss her aside. Katie's face drained of color at that.
Lily then wrapped her arm around mine. But even for just one time, I'd be jealous. If you're going to do that, why not choose me instead? Unlike her, I'm confident I can actually satisfy you. I glanced at Katie.
She was biting her lip in frustration, clutching the hem of her stained dress tightly. I had no fond memories of her, that's true.
But still. I gently unwrapped Lily's arm from mine.
She looked up at me in surprise.
You say Katie bullied me, but you did the same, didn't you, Lily? You stood by her side, laughing at me. To me, there's really no difference between the two of you. Now it was Lily's turn to go pale.
Ignoring her, I took Katie's hand.
Let's go, Katie. Ha! You said I could do whatever I want, right?
Still looking dazed, Katie allowed me to lead her out of the venue. The sky was completely dark by the time we stepped outside. I could feel Katie shiver through the hand I was holding.
We arrived at the nearest station. I turned to face her.
Katie, take that off.
What? What are you talking about? You pervert.
Katie stepped back, her face bright red. Realizing how that sounded, I hurried to explain.
No, that's not what I meant. You'll catch a cold if you stay in those wet clothes. I was actually in England until yesterday. And my sister asked me to bring back some clothes. You're about the same height, so you can change into one of those.
I retrieved the paper bag I had stored in the locker and handed it to Katie. After checking the contents, she took the bag and headed to the restroom at the station.
I'm done changing. When Katie returned, I was taken aback.
The outfit she had changed into had a deep V-neck that revealed a significant amount of cleavage.
What? You're the one who gave me these clothes.
Katie blushed and tried to cover her chest, and I quickly averted my eyes. I remembered seeing the outfit when I bought it, but I hadn't realized it was so revealing. Come to think of it, my sister had recently mentioned she had a boyfriend.
I guess she intended to wear it on a date.
The thought left me with mixed feelings. As I turned back, Katie tugged gently at my sleeve, looking up at me with flushed cheeks.
My heart skipped a beat. Hey, Colin. If you're up for it, do you want to go for another drink? Consider it a thank you for helping me change clothes.
Well, if you're okay with it, Katie.
We ended up at a small bar in the backstreets near the station. There were hardly any other customers.
Since none of our former classmates from the reunion are likely to come here, Katie can drink without worrying about being seen. After our drinks and snacks arrived, we sat in silence for a while.
I wondered if I should say something. But I couldn't think of a topic.
As I was racking my brain, Katie suddenly downed her drink and let out a long sigh.
Colin, deep down, you must be laughing at me.
The girl who bullied you so much is now in such a miserable state. I looked over at Katie, who was smiling bitterly. She ordered a second drink and rested her chin on her hand.
My father always wanted a son, but I was the only one born.
Maybe that's why he raised me so strictly, always telling me to stay ahead of others.
Not to let being a girl hold me back.
It worked when I was in elementary school.
But when we got to middle school, you came along. And I couldn't stay on top anymore. I started putting you down and mocking your family situation to compensate. At the time, I really thought that made me superior.
But today, I realized how wrong I was. Katie's plum wine arrived. She took a sip. You saw Lily today, didn't you?
I always thought she was a close friend. But to hear her talk like that. She was only around me because I was the CEO's daughter. I bet the others were the same.
I never had a real friend, not one. Katie set her glass down gently, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears.
My heart ached a little. I should have never gone to the reunion. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have had to hear Lily's true feelings or feel so low. I don't think that's true. Katie frowned at my words. You would have found out Lily's true feelings eventually. I think it's better that it happened today. The longer it takes, the more it hurts.
And if you're at rock bottom now, there's only one way to go from here up. Katie looked at me in stunned silence before a tear rolled down her cheek.
Colin, you're such a good person. To think you'd comfort someone like me.
Her tears kept coming, showing no sign of stopping. I rummaged through my bag and found a crumpled handkerchief at the bottom, which I handed to her.
Sorry, I didn't mean to start crying like this. It's fine. Better to cry when you need to.
At that, she began crying even harder. The bar owner gave us a suspicious look, which made me a bit flustered.
Maybe we should step outside. Some fresh air might help clear your head.
Katie nodded, still clutching the handkerchief, and I led her out of the bar.
The cool early summer breeze welcomed us.
We walked toward Katie's house, avoiding the busier parts of the town. At first, she was still sobbing quietly, but as we walked, she calmed down and eventually stopped crying. She then glanced up at me with a hint of worry.
Colin, aren't you going to catch a train? My house is in the opposite direction from the station, so you don't need to walk me all the way. There's no way I'd let you walk home alone at night.
I'll make sure you get home safely. Katie's eyes welled up again, but this time, she didn't let the tears fall. We continued walking side by side.
Before long, we arrived in front of Katie's house.
Thank you for walking me home, Colin.
You're welcome. Good night, Katie.
I turned to head back to the station when I felt a small tug on my sleeve.
Do you think we could meet again, sometime?
Her cheeks were slightly flushed, and she looked at me with those still moist eyes, making me feel a sudden rush of warmth throughout my body.
I mean, I still need to return your handkerchief and clothes. Understanding dawned on me. Oh, right. For a moment, I almost misunderstood her intentions. Sure, we'll meet again soon.
Katie tilted her head slightly in curiosity at my response.
At that moment, a voice called from inside her house, Katie? Are you back? Oh, yes. Katie quickly turned and entered her house.
Once I saw the door close behind her, I headed back into the night.
A few days later, I found myself visiting the headquarters of Zeller's Publishing.
I had received a request from the company's CEO, Mr. Stewart, to lend my expertise as a consultant.
So, you're Colin? I've heard quite a bit about you.
You're the right-hand man of Mr. Thompson at Thompson Electronics. And you've successfully turned around several companies.
We're counting on you to help us as well.
Of course. As we shook hands firmly, the door to the CEO's office opened, and Katie walked in, saying, "Excuse me." Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw me.
Let me introduce you. This is my daughter, Katie.
Katie, this is Colin from Thompson Electronics.
I've hired him to help us with the company's turnaround. Please assist him in any way he needs.
Yes, of course.
Katie was visibly shaken as we left the CEO's office. Why didn't you tell me the other day that you were coming to my company? Sorry, I was under a confidentiality agreement. Oh, I see. Well, I guess that can't be helped then. But I didn't bring your handkerchief today. Don't worry about it.
When I smiled, Katie pouted in dissatisfaction.
Is it just my imagination, or are her cheeks a bit red? So, what position do you hold here, Katie? I'm the head of the digital marketing department. If I can improve our performance here, my father will finally recognize my abilities. I found her enthusiasm endearing.
But then, her gaze dropped to the floor.
But things aren't going well. A lot of people are leaving. What reasons do they give for leaving? I don't know. I don't ask. What's the point in keeping people who aren't motivated? It just lowers efficiency. I couldn't help but let out a sigh. Katie frowned at my reaction. What? If you have something to say, just say it.
It's not a complaint, just some advice from a consultant.
You need to listen to your employees. Katie, are you really seeing your employees? Working with them?
No, I mostly work alone in my office. When I do interact with them, they either flatter me because I'm the CEO's daughter, or they look resentful.
It's always one or the other. That's part of the problem. Let's go take a look together. Ugh, really?
Despite her reluctance, I insisted that Katie show me around, and we headed to the digital marketing department. As we arrived, a man hurried over with an overly eager smile, looking as if he might start wringing his hands in sycophantic glee.
Oh, Katie. What a surprise to see you here. Is there something I can do for you? No, there's nothing. He just asked me to show him around the department. Sorry for the sudden intrusion. Would it be okay if I observed your work today?
When I asked, the male employee, looking slightly puzzled, responded with a hesitant, sure.
Katie, I'd like you to work here in the department today. Ugh, fine. Katie reluctantly brought her laptop out of her office.
She took a seat at an empty desk, starting her work. The atmosphere in the department grew tense with the unexpected appearance of Katie, who was usually absent.
Please, everyone, just go about your work as usual. Even though I said that, I understand it's not easy. To help, I asked the employees if there was anything I could assist with, and I made tea for those who seemed like they could use a break. By the time lunch was over, the atmosphere had eased a bit, and people were getting used to Katie being around. During that time, one of the female employees' phones rang. She hurried out to the hallway to take the call. The female employee returned, glancing nervously at Katie before addressing the male employee who had first spoken to us.
Excuse me," she said hesitantly. He sighed with clear annoyance.
"Is your child sick again?"
"I'm sorry, I promise I'll make up for it tomorrow."
The female employee apologized repeatedly, grabbed her bag, and quickly left the office. I walked over to the male employee. "Is this a common occurrence with her?"
"Yeah, it is.
It's a real problem because every time she leaves, our work gets delayed.
If we knew in advance that she'd be out,
it'd be easier to manage,"
he said with a weary sigh. With that and other things going on, the end of the workday finally arrived.
Some employees stayed for overtime, but most left within an hour. "Katie, what did you think after spending a day in the department?" I asked her once the room was empty.
She looked troubled.
"Well, I think the next person to quit might be that woman who left early today. I knew there were people here juggling work and parenting,
but I didn't realize how guilty they felt about leaving early."
The next day, Katie called that female employee into her office.
After about 30 minutes, the employee emerged looking somewhat relieved. Katie then proceeded to call in the other employees who were also balancing parenting with their work, spending about 30 minutes with each of them. After the last one left, she called me into her office. I listened to what they had to say. The general consensus is that they wish they could leave more easily when they need to, or that they could start work earlier or later depending on their situation.
I see. In that case, how about implementing a super flex time system?
A what?
Right now, the company mandates a 9 to 6 workday, right?
With a super flex time system, employees could choose their own start and end times.
Depending on how they set their hours, they could even leave during the day if necessary.
That sounds like it could address the concerns they mentioned. Katie placed her hand on her chin, deep in thought.
I want to propose this to my father. I mean, to Mr. Stewart. But I'm not sure if I can explain it well enough. Will you come with me?
Of course.
Together, we headed to the CEO's office and presented the idea of a super flex time system, outlining both its benefits and potential drawbacks, and suggested a trial run in the digital marketing department. It's a bit risky, but since Colin recommends it, let's give it a try. But if performance drops or doesn't improve, we'll stop it immediately. The CEO agreed.
Katie beamed with joy at his approval. The trial of the super flex time system in the digital marketing department turned out to be a resounding success. Not only the women with children, but other employees as well have praised it, saying things like, "I don't have to deal with crowded trains," and "It's made caring for my parents easier."
It seems the overall morale in the department has improved. The department's performance during the first month was the best it had ever been.
Seeing these results, the CEO decided to implement the super flex time system across all departments.
Katie and I visited each department to personally guide them through the transition. "Thank you, Colin,"
Katie said suddenly on our way back after explaining the system to the product development department.
"Lately,
the employees in the digital marketing department have been telling me that I've changed. They say that I used to act like an entitled CEO's daughter, but now I listen to them and actually work to improve things.
They think I'm a good boss now."
She smiled shyly. A look I had never seen on her before, and it made my heart race. "All of this is thanks to you, Colin.
You encouraged me and gave me the advice I needed as a consultant. I can't thank you enough."
After saying that, she bowed her head briefly before telling me to wait a moment and disappearing into her office. When she came back, she was holding a paper bag. "I brought back your clothes and handkerchief, and I also wanted to give you a small token of my gratitude. You didn't have to go to all that trouble, but thank you."
"Can I take a look now?"
"Yes, I hope you like it." Katie nodded, her cheeks slightly flushed. Inside the paper bag, along with the clothes and handkerchief, there was a beautifully wrapped box.
When I opened it, I found a tie.
It was a deep red with golden maple leaves embroidered on it, a truly elegant piece.
This must have been expensive. Don't worry about that. I thought it would suit you. Ah, thank you, it's really nice. Though it's almost too nice, I might not be able to use it every day.
Then save it for special occasions, Katie said with a playful smirk. But this time, it was different. It was an adorable expression that made her look genuinely charming. As the super flex time system began to take hold across all departments and the company started gaining momentum,
I was called to Mr. Stewart's office.
Thanks to your suggestion, our company is starting to show signs of recovery.
Employee satisfaction is up. And we're even seeing an increase in job applicants. I'm very grateful, Colin. No need to thank me, I just offered some advice.
And that humble attitude of yours is one of your strengths.
I have a proposal for you. Our company is considering opening an overseas branch. And I'd like you to be the president of that branch.
Me?
The president?
Yes.
You graduated from Oxford, didn't you? So your English should be perfect. I believe you're the ideal candidate. Don't you want to move beyond consulting and take on a leadership role on a global stage?
I couldn't help but furrow my brows in doubt at his words.
But Mr. Stewart, what about Katie?
If anyone should be the president, it's your daughter, who played a key role in this success.
Oh, Katie? No, she's not capable.
It's absurd to think she could handle it. If she had come up with this on her own, that'd be one thing.
But she didn't, did she?
She's better suited to managing a small regional office. Though he wasn't speaking about me, I felt a sharp sting of shock and anger.
Please allow me some time to consider the offer.
Of course. I'm looking forward to a favorable response. As I watched Mr. Stewart smile and cheerfully see me off, I felt a slight wave of nausea.
Still feeling unwell, I stepped into the hallway and suddenly stopped in my tracks. Katie was standing right in front of me.
Her face was pale.
Katie, did you hear what we were discussing?
She nodded stiffly before I could finish my sentence. Then she forced a smile at me, one that looked as if she might burst into tears at any moment.
That's amazing, Colin. You really are something. Go ahead and become the president. I can leave the company to my father and you. With that, she quickly turned away.
I saw something glisten as it fell to the floor. Without thinking, I reached out and grabbed her arm.
Let go of me.
Katie's voice trembled as she refused to meet my gaze.
Let's talk somewhere else. I held onto her arm as we stepped out into the company's back garden.
Since hardly anyone comes here, we don't have to worry about being seen. When I turned to face her, I wasn't surprised to see that she was crying.
Telling me to take over isn't like you, Katie. Do you really think this is the right thing?
You've worked so hard to get to this point.
Katie bit her lip and looked down.
Then she shook her head.
It wasn't enough. My efforts weren't enough.
I should have worked harder, like you did, Colin, to get into Oxford.
That's not true.
You worked hard enough, Katie.
I know you did.
I remember seeing you studying every day in that park near the middle school.
You chose such an out-of-the-way place because you didn't want anyone to see you. Unlike the school library or the town's library where you might be noticed. How did you know that? Katie looked up at me.
Her eyes wide in surprise.
I found you there by chance.
Seeing you work so hard, even though you were already impressive, inspired me. That's why I pushed myself in my studies.
Getting into Oxford and being here today is all thanks to the hard work I saw you putting in back then. That's not possible. Katie lowered her head again.
Hoping to restore her confidence, I gently took her hand.
Katie, why do you work? What's your reason for working so hard? I joined this company for my father.
I wanted to follow his advice, to be someone who could stand above others and never lose.
But
she raised her head, and in her clear eyes, I could see my reflection.
But now, it's not for my father. I want to work for people.
When I changed the way we worked based on your advice, and everyone was so happy,
it made me happy too.
So, Katie looked at me with a resolve that made her more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen before.
It was almost blinding, and I couldn't help but squint. Katie, I want to support your dream. I want to be there for you. No, Colin. I don't deserve your support. I've done terrible things to you in the past. Yes, it's true. You hurt me back in middle school. But I've come to care about you so much that I've forgiven those things. I've fallen in love with you, Katie. Katie suddenly widened her eyes in surprise. Then, slowly, her face began to turn red. Love. I don't think I'm worthy of that. Don't put yourself down. You're someone who can admit her faults and learn from them. You're a hard worker and an amazing woman. I tightened my grip on her hand. Tears started to fall from her round eyes. I love you too, Colin. You've supported me, and I've always admired how hardworking you are. Still crying, Katie clung to me. I gently, yet firmly, wrapped my arms around her. Once she had calmed down, we headed to the CEO's office together. Mr. Stewart, I have something to tell you. Seeing the determined look on Katie's face, Mr. Stewart frowned in puzzlement. I'm resigning from the company. What? What are you talking about? You have nowhere to go if you leave this company, Katie. I'll be fine. I'm starting my own business. Starting a business? That's ridiculous. You're nothing but a useless woman with no talent. Katie clenched her fists in frustration at his harsh words. I stepped forward on her behalf. You don't need to worry about her. I'll be by her side. You, Colin? Are you saying you're going to reject the offer I made and follow Katie instead? Yes, that's correct. Mr. Stewart burst out laughing. This is rich. You're throwing away a golden opportunity to lead, just to follow this failure. I didn't think you could be so foolish, Colin. Fine. Do as you wish. Try it if you can. I'm sure you'll fail and be bankrupt in no time. Ignoring Mr. Stewart's mocking laughter, I took Katie's hand and led her out of the CEO's office. That's the first time my father has called me a failure to my face. There were faint tears welling up in Katie's eyes. I gently wiped them away with my fingers. Katie, you're not a failure. We'll prove him wrong. She looked up at me, and her face brightened as she nodded. Katie and I decided to start our own consulting company together. Given my reputation as a top-notch consultant among major corporations, it wasn't difficult to attract new clients. That's why the business quickly got on track. I had anticipated this when I decided to start a consulting firm, and it seems it was the right choice. After founding the company, Katie began studying to become a consultant herself, and in no time, she earned certifications as a small and medium enterprise consultant, a certified public accountant, and a tax accountant. I couldn't help but be impressed by her, once again. Even back when she was a department head at Zeller's Publishing, I had noticed her exceptional communication skills. She listens carefully to the client's needs and provides precise instructions. Thanks to this, even though she's only been in consulting for less than a year, she already has a lot of clients. Our company became so successful that about 6 months in, we realized we couldn't manage everything with just the two of us. So we began hiring employees. When we spread the word that we were open to hiring people without consulting experience, many of Katie's former subordinates came forward, eager to join our team. I want to work under Katie again. Hearing this, Katie couldn't hold back her tears. We agreed that hiring trustworthy people was key, so we brought them all on board. With enough staff and steadily growing performance, everything was going smoothly. Then, we received a request from Zeller's Publishing. Rumors had been circulating for a while that the company's financial situation was deteriorating. They were reportedly closing down branch offices one after another. In desperation, they turned to us for help. Katie, what do you think? You can decline if you're not comfortable with it. No, I'll go. She replied, her expression serious. So, we headed to Zeller's Publishing together. I was shocked when we arrived at the entrance, there was no receptionist. How are we supposed to meet with Mr. Stewart? As Katie and I exchanged bewildered looks, Mr. Stewart appeared from the back. He looked even more haggard and exhausted than when we had last seen him. Katie gasped quietly. Thank you for coming. Honestly, I thought you might refuse after the horrible things I said."
His vacant eyes met ours before he suddenly dropped to his knees and bowed his head.
"Please, save my company. Employees are leaving one after another, and the business is spiraling downward. I can't think of any way to stop it. I apologize for everything I've done. Please, please help us. Please, get up, Dad."
Katie knelt before Mr. Stewart and extended her hand. "I know how much this company means to you, how you built it from nothing with blood, sweat, and tears.
That's why I'll help.
No matter how harsh your words were, I still love you and this company." Tears streamed down Mr. Stewart's face as he looked up at Katie and grasped her hand tightly.
"I'm sorry, Katie. I'm so sorry.
You endured my strict upbringing for my sake, yet I became so arrogant. I used to think it was natural for you and everyone else to work for me, but it wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I realized how wrong I was."
"I'm truly sorry." Katie smiled and helped him to his feet. "If you're at rock bottom, then the only way left is up, right, Dad?"
As she said that, Katie looked at me and stuck out her tongue slightly.
I couldn't help but smile.
Yes, you're right. I never imagined how grateful I'd be to have someone extend a helping hand in such a difficult time.
I'll never forget this. Even if the company ends up going under, we won't let that happen. I'll protect your company, Dad."
Seeing Katie's bright declaration, Mr. Stewart finally managed to smile.
Thanks to Katie's efforts, Zeller's Publishing was successfully turned around. 1 year later, Katie and I got married.
The wedding was held at a hotel near the station by our old middle school, the place where we began this new chapter in our lives.
And now, let's raise our glasses to the happy couple.
With a toast from Samuel, who served as our master of ceremonies, everyone began to enjoy the meal. We had invited not only our families and relatives but also friends and former classmates. The warm and joyful atmosphere of the reception made me smile.
Just then, Samuel approached us. "Congratulations, Cullen and Katie.
I never would have guessed you two would end up married back when we had that reunion."
"Neither did I." "Me neither."
Both Katie and I agreed with Samuel's words, so a small laugh escaped between us.
"That's a really nice tie, Cullen."
Samuel was pointing at the maple pattern tie that Katie had given me. "It's the first gift Katie ever gave me, so I just had to wear it today." As I said this, Katie blushed and looked down shyly. Samuel watched us with a smile, clearly pleased.
"Oh, right. Hey, Lily."
Samuel suddenly turned and called out to Lily, who had been nervously glancing our way from a distance. Lily flinched slightly but slowly walked over. Samuel gave her a gentle push on the shoulder.
"Come on, there's something you need to say, right?" "Yeah."
Katie, Cullen, congratulations on your marriage."
"And I'm sorry for the terrible things I said at the reunion." Lily bowed deeply, her voice trembling. Katie and I exchanged a glance.
Katie smiled reassuringly and turned to Lily. "Raise your head, Lily. If you hadn't pointed out my flaws that day, I wouldn't be sitting here next to Cullen.
So I'm actually grateful to you. Besides, if I hadn't forgiven you, I wouldn't have invited you to our wedding, right? Katie." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she managed to hold them back. I'd like to start over as friends.
This time, not with you as the CEO's daughter, but just as Katie."
"Of course."
Katie beamed with joy and shook Lily's hand. As I admired Katie's smiling face, Samuel nudged me in the ribs.
"You're a lucky man, Colin." "Absolutely."
In response to Samuel's words, I gave my brightest smile.
There are some things in life that remain out of reach no matter how hard you try.
But just because you couldn't grasp them doesn't mean the journey was wasted. There will always be someone who sees your efforts and recognizes them. And that journey, in itself, is what leads to happiness. That's why I'll keep striving from now on to build a happy future with her.